All right, good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. I'm starting a little bit early here because, as you guys know, yesterday for Monday, my recording did not pick up my mic, so we didn't have a review or anything for yesterday, and I wasn't here on Friday. So I want to go back and go through what happened here in the market since we'll look at Thursday of last week, we'll look at Friday of last week, and then look at what happened on Monday. So let's come back here. We want to go back to December 1st and actually come back to the 30th. So the last time I did a broadcast, or outside of yesterday, the broadcast before yesterday was back on November 30th. And if you guys recall, we keep seeing a lot of clues for a pullback, and there always seems to be an issue. So the market does kind of pull back, but then the bulls come back in and they jump it back up. In fact, if you go up to the higher time frames and you look at what's happened here for the last 11, 12 days in a row, it's been nothing but a total chop fest, right? And every time the market breaks up to a new high, we get clues for a pullback. The pullbacks do occur. We get a clue right off of our expected resistance area. In fact, it pulls back, but then the bulls just pop it again. And then we get another bearish clue. We get a very shallow pullback, and then they pop it again, right? And so that's kind of been the story for a very long time right now. And so let's go back. So we were expecting, because the market had some bearish clues from the highs last week, and we were holding from 50% of the day before the market opened. This is right here. The vertical line is where the market opened. We said, hey, look, we're holding below 50% of the previous day. Let's see. I mean, it looks like if we can get down through VWAP, that this might be a wash lower. So right out of the open, beautiful opportunity to get short right off the back end of VWAP and the 200 and ride it right to our first expected support area, which was the low of the day before. And that's what happened. I think we never were able to get through the low of the day before outside of these very shy little peaks below. You had a great opportunity to also go ahead and try the Hopel and the VWAP again there. But the bulls defended it. So we got the beginning of a pullback, but then the bulls jumped right back in. So that was basically the story. So this was Thursday. We held. They peaked back below. It was a total mess. And then they popped it at the end of the day, if I recall. Actually, let me go back here. I'm mixing up what I thought was going to happen here. Oh, yeah, so it did eventually pop. So we came down. Eventually, they did hold, and it was like the stair step that I always talk about. So it literally stair stepped off our roadmap levels, right off the 50%, right off the VWAP, right off, just one by one here, held the Hopel and the VWAP. Peeked through, came right to the scaffolding, right? And then stair stepped again. There's the Hopel. There's the close of the day before. And then finally, once we got down through the low of the day before, that became the next stair step down. The problem was, again, it seems like the bulls, they jump in on all these little short pullbacks. They jump right back in. And sure enough, about 2 points in front of the next scaffolding, they found support. Popped it right back up to 50% of the previous day. That was right where we failed in the pre-market, right? So total mess, but we still got a nice stair-step action on the bearish side of things, which was the bias, especially as we held below VWAP and held below 50% of the previous day. And then they had to throw the wrench in the gear and bring it right back. Okay, so that brings us into Friday. Interestingly enough, on Friday, and actually, I don't remember if we mentioned, yeah, let's go over here. On Friday, we continue to try to pop, and in the overnight session, they hold the close of the day before, close of Thursday, and try to break out through the high of Thursday, and then they bring it right back down. Here's another peak above and fail situation. And then on Friday, this was the day I wasn't here to give you guys a pre-market. What you should have noticed is that the low of the open, so the market started to fail with a peak above and fail pattern, giving us a bearish kind of taste in our mouth, right? But then, bam, they held 50% of the previous day and then got it back through VWAP. So coming out of the open on Friday here, you did have an opportunity to get short, but we held 50% of the previous day. In fact, it bounced a tick in front of it. And then from there, we started to get, again, it seems like every time we get clues for the bears for a pullback, just as quick as we start to get the pullback, the bulls just jump right back in. So they held it, they popped up, they got through VWAP, and as you can see here, some beautiful pullbacks right to the 200 as we're breaking out there. And if you were a little bit uncertain as to what you wanted to do because we were kind of holding, once it really appreciably popped through, you got another tag right back to the 200 and the VWAP. And that was actually a beautiful retracement of the daily price action, right? Nice 38 to 50% retrace right into that pocket. From there, they tried to rally it higher, but then faked everybody out again and brought the market right back down. The market has been a total disaster for over 2 weeks now. It's been peak above and fail, peak above and fail, peak above and fail, right? And all these failures that pull back turn into a support again. So it's just the nature of the market right now. Can't control it. So Friday was a little bit funky there with all that. We did eventually break out, and it's interesting to note as well that we did stair step up our levels again. However messy it might have been, we did hold 50% of the previous day, and then to the 200, and then tried to break out, but then they failed back down. But we never left, and we came up to the next roadmap level, right? It was like this one, and then this one, and then finally, eventually, once we got through all this and it was messy, we then held the close of the day before, which was the next roadmap level. If you really look at it, it was 1, 2, and then 3, and then we pulled back and then held the hopeful, which is now the next roadmap level, and then that was the beginning of that breakout. So if you were getting chopped up in the morning because of all this BS that was going on, once we got the sign for the breakout and we held on the pullback to the 200, to the hopeful here, and we started to push, you did have a lot of great opportunities to get in long here to ride this up. And interestingly enough, on Friday, what was the high of the day? Our next expected resistance zone, which was 46.03 to 46.09. So we came right to our next expected resistance. The market petered out and we pulled back. Okay, so that was our next pocket of expected resistance. And then that kind of, let's see how the week ended here. And then it just kind of went sideways at the end of the week there. And interestingly enough, kind of holding 46.03, the discrete level that we had on our charts there on the first test back here. Then once we got below it, holding below it. Okay, that now brings us into this week now. Here's Monday. This is the Globex session on Sunday. And as you can see, again, we kind of peaked up, and now we're failing from Friday's highs. And Friday's highs were the high of the week there. Again, the high of last week was our expected pocket of resistance, 46.03 to 46.09 that I warned you about. Okay, the low of last week was the other pocket we were watching. So now here is Sunday's Globex session. Great opportunity to get short off the back end of the VWAP. Like I tell you guys nearly every morning when we look at the overnight price action, and got this beautiful ride down. And where was our first expected support zone? Down below us here on Monday when we were doing our pre-market analysis. This Monday we had this pocket 45.62 to 66. It was a 4-point pocket that made a lot of sense to be the area of support if the market started to sell off. So as we were doing our pre-market yesterday, we were testing into our first pocket of expected support. And I told you guys this actually might be where we start to get some attempt by the bulls to break out to the upside. So that's how we came into the open yesterday. And let's take a look at what ended up happening here. So the market bounced right off of, and if you go to the higher time frames, you can see this is a big green box that we highlighted. So it bounced right off our next expected resistance. So again, Friday's high, we failed from the pocket of resistance that we highlighted ahead of time before the market ever got up there. And then as the market failed coming into Monday morning, our first expected support area was right here. I mean, I just Can't make this stuff up, guys. There's something to this, right? So the market opened yesterday. We held for the bearish side of things because the market couldn't get through 50% of the previous week in VWAP, right? This little pocket of about 2.5 points would be, once we bounce from here, the expected next resistance zone, right? I didn't mark it on the chart, but you guys should already know because I talk about this day in, day out. If we can't get through 50% of the previous week, we can't get through VWAP, that is a bearish clue, right? So this would be our first expected resistance. Of course, the most aggressive area being the 200 there. And sure enough, bulls had a little bit of trouble. They pulled it back, right back to our scaffolding, the first expected support area, tried to bounce, and then failed right off the 200 here to bring us lower. And then it was pretty clear who was in power, right? So we opened, looked like the bulls might have gotten strength to bring us right back up to the top of the range. We failed in the area that makes the most sense for a failure. And then we started to break lower through our first expected support zone. So at that point, would have been a good opportunity to try to get short. Of course, the market has been so whipsawy and up and down that it seems like a lot of times you go to get short and then they pop it right back up. And as they're going up, you might get long, and then they turn it and bring it right back down. And that's how it's been for a long time. If we go back up here, you can just see day in, day out, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. We have not left 45.40 to 45.80 here for over 12 days of price action now, or just coming into 12 days. So it's been tricky. So they did get down through our first support area, first area of expected support. Should have been a clue to go ahead and try to get short there, but really no opportunities. We never came back up into the 200. There weren't any other levels to really try until they came back to kiss it. And if you would have tried a short off the low of the day before there, you would have got stopped out. And that's the nature of trading. There's not every time that we test into a level is it going to work perfectly. So they got through the first. This was really the best opportunity, was to get long out of the open right into our first expected resistance, or getting short at our first expected resistance because the market couldn't get through VWAP, and then looking for the break below the morning support. So this wouldn't have worked. The pullback to the 200 would have if you said, hey, look, why don't I see, because we just got back through VWAP here and pulled back to it, maybe this is the beginning of a change in phase, right? We've got the we've got the crossover here starting to break and make higher lows, higher highs. This might be the beginning of a rotation, and you could have jumped in on that second pullback. But that was it. Got back through VWAP. You could have got in long, and I know there's a trader in here that does that pretty often. What they'll do is they'll wait for a nice clear break, something like this, where we fail through a level and then we start to come all the way back through VWAP. He'll just get right in as we're breaking out, and that would have been a great little trade right to, again, expected resistance, which was 50% of last week, right? So they held VWAP, but then could not get through 50% of last week. And then let's go ahead. This is yesterday here, held 50% of last week, and again, super choppy. And then right at the end of the day, they held the scaffolding level and brought it up to peak above that afternoon high or morning high, and then brought it right back down. So it's been just a total mess. And now coming into here Tuesday morning, December 5th, as you can see, we're still trading between 45.40, 45.50, and 45.80, still inside of this 30 to 40 point chop zone for now the 12th day. Okay. In the overnight session, we did basically hold down below the 200. But as you can see right now, it's just a total chop fest. Nothing too sexy to really mention, outside of the fact that if you got short off the back end of the VWAP last night, right here, that was it. You could have got the short off the back end of the VWAP, never came back to test your entry. You could have grabbed at least 10 points to the downside, right? So some pretty good stuff. That is like almost every day we see something like that. Doesn't mean every time we test in the overnight that you're going to get it, but here's another example, right? If we're keeping score, this is just another example of it working. So coming into the open right now, as you can see, not really much to say, just total chop. And let's go ahead and jump up to our higher time frames now.